Maya loved to skip. She skipped to school. She skipped in the park. And she even tried to skip while doing her homework, which wasn't very successful. She was 10 years old and full of sunshine. Her smile could light up a whole room, and her laugh was like a happy little song. Maya lived with her mom, dad, and older brother, David, in a cozy house filled with books and the smell of her mom's amazing cooking. Her dad was a teacher and her mom was a nurse. They always encouraged Maya to be creative and to follow her dreams. David, her brother, was her hero. He was a U.S. attorney, which meant he helped people by making sure laws were followed. He was always there for Maya, whether she needed help with her math homework or just someone to talk to. They were the best of friends even though he was much older. He always made time for her, reading her bedtime stories and playing games in the park. Maya looked up to him so much and admired his dedication to helping others and making the world a fairer place. She knew he was smart and strong, but most of all, she knew he had a good heart. One day, Maya's school announced a talent show. Maya was so excited. She loved to write poems and she had written a special one about friendship and helping others. It was called Sharing Smiles. She practiced reading it every day, adding just the right amount of feeling to each word. She told David all about it. He listened patiently, his eyes sparkling with pride. "That's wonderful, Maya. I can't wait to hear it," he said, giving her a high five. He knew how much this talent show meant to her. The talent show was the biggest event at Northwood Elementary. Kids sang, danced, and even did magic tricks. Maya felt a little nervous, but she knew David and her parents would be in the audience, cheering her on. She imagined herself on stage, the spotlight shining on her as she shared her poem with everyone. She pictured her friends smiling and nodding, understanding the message of her words. This wasn't just about showing off her talent, it was about sharing something important from her heart. She wanted to make people feel good. This was her chance to shine. The night of the talent show arrived, buzzing with excitement. Maya wore a bright yellow dress that made her feel like sunshine. Backstage, kids were laughing and practicing their acts. Maya took a deep breath and held her poem tightly. When it was her turn, Maya walked confidently onto the stage. The spotlight felt warm on her face. She saw her parents and David in the audience, smiling at her. She took another deep breath and began to read. Her voice was clear and strong, filled with emotion. The audience listened quietly, captivated by her words. She talked about how sharing a smile could make someone's day brighter and how helping others could make the world a better place. As she finished, the audience erupted in applause. Maya beamed, feeling proud and happy. But then, as she was leaving the stage, she noticed the microphone stand was a little wobbly. She gently tried to adjust it so the next performer wouldn't have any trouble. The principal, Mrs. Davison, saw this and rushed over, thinking Maya was messing with the equipment. "Maya, what are you doing?" she asked sternly. Maya tried to explain, but Mrs. Davison didn't seem to listen. She just frowned and told Maya to go back to her seat. Maya felt a knot in her stomach. She hadn't meant to do anything wrong. The next day at school, Maya was called into Mrs. Davison's office. Her heart pounded in her chest. Mrs. Davison sat behind her large desk, her face serious. "Maya," she began, "I was very disappointed in your behavior at the talent show." Maya tried to explain again that she was only trying to help, but Mrs. Davison wouldn't listen. She said that Maya had been disrespectful and had disrupted the show. She told Maya that she was going to have to write an apology letter and that she might not be allowed to participate in future school events. Maya was devastated. She couldn't believe that Mrs. Davison thought she would do something like that on purpose. She felt like she was being punished for something she didn't do. To make matters worse, Mrs. Davison decided to take the issue to the school board and Judge Thompson, a local judge who sometimes dealt with school matters. Mrs. Davison painted a picture of Maya as a troublemaker who didn't respect authority. She exaggerated the incident, making it seem like Maya had deliberately tried to sabotage the talent show. Maya felt helpless and scared. She knew she needed help. Judge Thompson was known in the community for being a strict man. He always wore a serious expression and his voice was booming and intimidating. Some people thought he was fair, but others whispered that he had a tendency to be harder on certain people, especially children from less fortunate backgrounds. He seemed to have made up his mind about people before he even heard their side of the story. He had a reputation for being particularly harsh with black children. There were stories of him handing out harsher punishments for minor offenses compared to other kids. Some parents felt helpless, believing the system was rigged against them. They felt that their children were not given the same chance as others. When Mrs. Davison presented her complaint about Maya, Judge Thompson immediately formed an opinion. He saw Maya as a disruptive influence, a troublemaker who needed to be taught a lesson. He didn't bother to investigate the situation further or hear Maya's side of the story. He just accepted Mrs. Davison's version of events as the truth. This would lead to a great injustice for Maya. Judge Thompson wrote a report about the incident, but it wasn't fair at all. He described Maya as a disruptive and disrespectful student who had deliberately sabotaged the talent show. He used strong, negative words that made Maya sound like a very bad person. He twisted the truth and made her actions seem much worse than they actually were. He completely ignored the fact that Maya had performed a beautiful poem about friendship and kindness. He didn't mention that she was a good student who always tried to do her best. He only focused on the one small incident with the microphone stand, exaggerating it to make her look guilty. The report was full of unfair assumptions and biased opinions. It was clear that Judge Thompson had already made up his mind about Maya before he even knew her. This misrepresentation of Maya was deeply hurtful and unjust. It could have serious consequences for her future, affecting her chances of getting into good schools and pursuing her dreams. The words in that report painted a completely false picture of who Maya really was. David was a strong and determined man. He worked hard every day to make sure everyone had a fair chance, no matter who they were or where they came from. He believed in justice and equality with all his heart. He was known for his integrity and his unwavering commitment to doing what was right. He was a loving and protective brother to Maya. He always encouraged her to be herself and to stand up for what she believed in. He was her biggest fan and her role model. He admired her kindness, her creativity, and her unwavering optimism. When he heard about what had happened to Maya at the talent show, he was furious. He couldn't believe that someone would treat his sister so unfairly. He knew that Maya would never do anything to intentionally cause trouble. He suspected that something else was going on, something unfair and unjust. He knew he had to do something to help her, but his position as a U.S. attorney made it tricky. He couldn't just barge in and demand justice. He had to be careful and thoughtful about how he approached the situation. He felt a deep responsibility to protect his sister. David felt a wave of frustration. He knew he couldn't just walk into the courthouse and demand Judge Thompson change his mind. That would be a misuse of his power and could even get him into trouble. He had to find a way to help Maya without crossing any ethical lines. He started by talking to his parents. They were just as upset as he was. They knew Maya was a good kid and they couldn't understand why Mrs. Davison and Judge Thompson were treating her this way. They felt helpless, but they trusted David to do what was right. David spent hours reading the school board's documents and Judge Thompson's report. The more he read, the angrier he became. The report was filled with inaccuracies and unfair judgments. It was clear that Judge Thompson had not given Maya a fair chance. He knew he couldn't directly represent Maya. That would be a conflict of interest. But he could investigate the situation and gather information. He decided to start by looking into Judge Thompson's past rulings to see if there was a pattern of unfairness. He hoped to find something that would prove that Judge Thompson was biased and that Maya was being unfairly targeted. He knew this would be a long and difficult process, but he was determined to do everything he could to help his sister. David spent weeks carefully reviewing old cases handled by Judge Thompson. It was like putting together a puzzle, one piece at a time. He meticulously examined court transcripts, talked to lawyers who had appeared before the judge, and even interviewed some of the families involved in those cases. Slowly, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. David noticed that Judge Thompson seemed to consistently give harsher sentences to black children and teenagers, especially those from low-income families. He found cases where similar offenses committed by white children resulted in lighter punishments or even just warnings. He also discovered that Judge Thompson often relied on stereotypes and assumptions when making his decisions, rather than looking at the individual circumstances of each case. The more David uncovered, the more convinced he became that Judge Thompson was biased. He knew he had to find a way to expose this bias and protect other children from suffering the same injustice as Maya. He carefully documented all of his findings, creating a detailed report with clear evidence of Judge Thompson's discriminatory behavior. He knew this report could be the key to getting justice for Maya and other children like her. David knew he couldn't just march into his boss's office and accuse a judge of being biased. He needed to present his findings carefully and respectfully. He decided to approach Mr. Abernathy, a senior attorney in the Department of Justice who was known for his wisdom and fairness. Mr. Abernathy had been a mentor to David for many years and David trusted his judgment. He asked Mr. Abernathy for a meeting, explaining that he had uncovered some troubling information about a local judge and wanted his advice. He carefully presented his report, laying out the evidence of Judge Thompson's biased rulings. He explained how this bias had affected Maya and other children in the community. Mr. Abernathy listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and examining the evidence closely. He was clearly concerned by what David had uncovered. He thanked David for bringing this to his attention and promised to look into it further. David felt a sense of relief, knowing that he had done everything he could to bring the truth to light. He trusted that Mr. Abernathy would do the right thing. This was a crucial step towards getting justice for Maya. Mr. Abernathy took David's concerns very seriously. He knew that accusations of judicial bias were not to be taken lightly. He immediately launched an internal investigation, assigning a team of experienced lawyers to review Judge Thompson's past cases and David's report. The investigators spoke to many people in the community, including lawyers, parents, and former defendants. They carefully examined court records and interviewed witnesses. The more they investigated, the more evidence they found to support David's claims. It became clear that Judge Thompson had a pattern of treating black children unfairly. The Department of Justice decided that it was necessary to take action. They filed a formal complaint against Judge Thompson, accusing him of judicial misconduct and bias. This was a serious step that could have significant consequences for the judge, including suspension or even removal from the bench. The investigation sent shockwaves through the community. People were surprised that a judge could be accused of such serious wrongdoing. But many were also hopeful that justice would finally be served. The news quickly spread, and soon everyone knew about the investigation into Judge Thompson's behavior. As the news of the investigation spread, people started to talk. Maya's classmates and friends at school learned about what had happened at the talent show and how Mrs. Davison and Judge Thompson had treated her unfairly. They couldn't believe it. Many of Maya's friends decided to show their support. They made posters with slogans like "Justice for Maya" and "Fairness for All." They organized a peaceful protest outside the school, holding up their signs and chanting Maya's name. Even some of the teachers joined in, showing their solidarity with Maya and her family. Parents in the community also rallied behind Maya. They wrote letters to the school board and the local newspaper, expressing their outrage at the injustice. They organized a community meeting to discuss the issue and to find ways to support Maya and other children who had been treated unfairly. The community's support gave Maya strength and courage. She knew that she wasn't alone and that people cared about her and believed in her. This outpouring of support made her feel like she could face anything. Judge Thompson felt the heat. The investigation by the Department of Justice was closing in, and the community was turning against him. He realized he had made a mistake in how he had handled Maya's case. He began to worry about his reputation and his career. He decided to try to undo some of the damage he had caused. He called Mrs. Davison and told her that he was dropping the case against Maya. He said that he had reviewed the evidence and had decided that Maya had not done anything wrong. He hoped that this would make the investigation go away and that people would forget about the whole thing. He even tried to reach out to Maya's parents, offering to apologize to Maya in person. But Maya's parents refused to let him near their daughter. They didn't trust him, and they didn't want him to upset Maya any further. Judge Thompson thought that by dismissing the case, he could make everything disappear. He hoped that the Department of Justice would stop their investigation and that the community would forgive him. But he was wrong. The Department of Justice was determined to get to the bottom of things, and they weren't going to let him off the hook so easily. The ball was already rolling. The Department of Justice moved forward with its investigation. They scheduled a hearing to present the evidence of Judge Thompson's bias. David was asked to testify about his findings, and other families who had been affected by Judge Thompson's unfair rulings were also invited to share their stories. The hearing was held in a large courtroom, and it was packed with people. Maya and her family were there, along with many members of the community who wanted to show their support. Judge Thompson sat at the defendant's table, looking nervous and uncomfortable. David testified calmly and confidently, presenting the evidence he had gathered. He showed how Judge Thompson had consistently given harsher sentences to black children, and how he had relied on stereotypes and assumptions when making his decisions. Other families shared their heartbreaking stories of how Judge Thompson's unfair rulings had affected their lives. They spoke of lost opportunities, broken dreams, and a deep sense of injustice. Maya watched the hearing with a mix of emotions. She felt sad for the other families who had suffered, But she also felt hopeful that justice would finally be served. She knew that this hearing was about more than just her case. It was about fairness and equality for all children. After hearing all the evidence, the panel of judges made a decision. They found Judge Thompson guilty of judicial misconduct and bias. They ruled that he had treated black children unfairly and that he had violated his oath to uphold the law. As a consequence, Judge Thompson was suspended from his position for 6 months without pay. He was also required to attend sensitivity training and to work with a mentor to learn how to be a more fair and impartial judge. The ruling sent a clear message that bias and discrimination would not be tolerated in the justice system. It was a victory for Maya and for all the other children who had been treated unfairly by Judge Thompson. While Judge Thompson tried to defend himself, claiming he never meant to be biased, the panel didn't accept his excuses. They emphasized that even unintentional bias can have harmful consequences and judges have a responsibility to be aware of their own prejudices and to treat everyone fairly. The decision was a turning point in the community, proving that justice could prevail even against powerful figures. Maya felt a huge weight lifted off her shoulders. She was so happy that Judge Thompson had been held accountable for his actions. She knew that his suspension and training wouldn't completely erase what had happened, but it was a step in the right direction. More importantly, Maya felt empowered. She had stood up for herself and she had helped to make a difference. She realized that even though she was just a kid, her voice mattered. She learned that it's important to speak out against injustice, even when it's scary. She also felt grateful for her brother, David, and for all the people who had supported her. She knew that she couldn't have done it without them. The experience taught her the importance of community and the power of standing together. After the hearing, Maya went back to school with a newfound confidence. She no longer felt ashamed or embarrassed. She knew that she had done nothing wrong and that she had the support of her friends, her family, and her community. She was ready to move forward and to continue sharing her smiles with the world. She even started writing a new poem about standing up for what's right. David was incredibly proud of Maya. He admired her courage and her willingness to stand up for what was right. He knew that it hadn't been easy for her, but she had faced the challenge with grace and determination. He was also proud of the role he had played in helping her. He had used his skills and his position to fight for justice, and he had made a real difference in her life and in the lives of others. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction knowing that he had done everything he could to protect his sister and to ensure that she was treated fairly. He knew that the fight for equality was far from over, but he was committed to continuing the struggle. He vowed to use his power and his influence to help those who were less fortunate and to fight against discrimination in all its forms. He wanted to make the world a better place for Maya and for all children, regardless of their background or their race. He knew that together they could make a difference. He smiled, thinking about Maya's poem, Sharing Smiles, and how its message of kindness and compassion could change the world. The community celebrated Maya and her family. They organized a special event at the school to honor her courage and her commitment to justice. They invited everyone who had supported her, including her friends, her teachers, and her neighbors. At the event, Maya was presented with a special award for her bravery and her dedication to making the world a better place. She also had the opportunity to read her poem, Sharing Smiles, to the entire community. As she read, her voice was clear and strong, filled with emotion. The audience listened intently, captivated by her words. They were inspired by her message of kindness and compassion, and they were reminded of the importance of standing up for what's right. After she finished reading, the audience erupted in applause. Maya beamed, feeling proud and happy. The celebration was a testament to the power of community and the importance of standing together against injustice. It showed that even in the face of adversity, hope and justice can prevail. It was a day that Maya would never forget. It was a day that reminded her that she could make a difference in the world, one smile at a time. Mrs. Davison, seeing the error of her ways and the community's disapproval, decided to make amends. She apologized to Maya in front of the entire school. She admitted that she had been wrong to judge Maya so harshly and that she had let her own biases cloud her judgment. She promised to do better in the future and to treat all students with fairness and respect. She also announced that she was starting a new program at the school to promote diversity and inclusion. The program would focus on teaching students about different cultures and perspectives and on creating a more welcoming and inclusive environment for everyone. Maya accepted Mrs. Davison's apology with grace and forgiveness. She knew that it took courage to admit when you were wrong, and she appreciated Mrs. Davison's willingness to learn from her mistakes. She hoped that Mrs. Davison's actions would inspire others to examine their own biases and to treat everyone with kindness and respect. The apology and the new program marked a new beginning for Northwood Elementary, a step towards a more just and equitable future. Years later, Maya continued to write poetry. Her words touched many hearts and inspired people all over the world. She became a strong advocate for justice and equality, using her voice to speak out against discrimination and to promote understanding and compassion. David continued to work as a U.S. attorney, fighting for fairness and equality in the justice system. He never forgot what had happened to Maya, and he used that experience to guide his work. He always remembered to listen to all sides of a story and to treat everyone with respect, regardless of their background. And Northwood Elementary became known as a school that valued diversity and inclusion. Mrs. Davison's new program thrived, teaching students to appreciate different cultures and perspectives. The school became a model for other schools in the community, showing how to create a more welcoming and equitable environment for all students. The story of Maya and David became a local legend, a reminder that even the smallest voice can make a big difference. It was a story about courage, justice, and the power of community. It was a story that would be told for generations to come. It was a story that started with a talent show and a misunderstanding, but it ended with hope and a brighter future. This story reminds us that fairness and equality are important for everyone. It shows us that even when things seem unfair, it's important to speak up and stand up for what's right. Maya's story teaches us that our voices matter, no matter how small we think they are. It also reminds us that prejudice and bias can hurt people, and it's our responsibility to challenge them whenever we see them. Just like David, we can all be allies and advocates for those who are being treated unfairly. Remember Maya's poem, Sharing Smiles. Even a simple act of kindness can make a big difference in someone's life. So let's all try to share our smiles and our compassion with the world. Never be afraid to speak up for what's right. Never lose hope even when things seem difficult. And always remember that together we can create a world where everyone is treated with fairness, equality, and respect. Let Maya's story inspire you to be a force for good in the world, one smile, one word, one act of kindness at a time. Justice can prevail,